So, you know that feeling where you swear you are never, ever going to date someone like your ex again? You are just absolutely certain of it.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. And then suddenly, it's like 2 years later, and you look across the dinner table and you realize, wow, I am dating their exact emotional twin.
Exactly. Or, it happens with careers too.
Oh, totally. You leave this deeply toxic workplace, you find a shiny new job, great title, and then like 6 months in, you realize you have somehow managed to attract the exact same type of terrible micromanaging boss.
It is uncanny how that happens.
Or, I mean, think about finances. No matter how much you earn or how carefully you track your spending, you somehow always end up with that exact same level of suffocating financial stress at the end of the month. It is just this maddening, universally relatable cycle.
It really is. And the human tendency to externalize that cycle is, well, it's a fascinating defense mechanism.
What do you mean by externalize?
I mean, when the same pattern repeats over and over, our immediate psychological reflex is to blame the external environment. We blame the economy for our money problems. We blame the dating pool for our relationships, corporate culture for our bosses.
Right, because it's easier to say everyone else is the problem.
Precisely. But when we strip away that narrative, that whole story of bad luck or circumstance, what we're actually looking at is a highly predictable mechanical output of the human mind.
Wait, mechanical?
Yeah.
Like a machine?
Yes, exactly. The repetition is not some cosmic flaw or bad luck. It is the raw functioning of your internal programming. And it's also about the literal energy frequencies that dictate human reality.
Okay, so that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Our mission today is to completely isolate that internal programming.
That's right.
We want to examine this invisible script that's running like the vast majority of your life and break down the literal neurological mechanics of how to rewrite it.
And it is entirely possible to rewrite it once you understand the machinery.
I always look at this through the lens of a smartphone. Like, our conscious lives feel like the apps on a screen, you know?
That is a great way to frame it.
Right, we tap the fitness app, we open the banking app, we swipe left, we swipe right, and we just assume that our conscious choices are what's dictating the output of the phone.
But there's a whole other layer there.
Exactly. Beneath that user interface, there is this massive hidden background operating system. And it's running silently, it's draining the battery, it's deciding which apps are even allowed to open. And the terrifying part is we don't have administrator access. We don't even know the password to our own operating system.
And to really understand the sheer scale of that background operating system, you have to look at the cognitive load it handles, especially compared to our conscious awareness.
Okay, lay the numbers on me. How big is the difference?
Well, your conscious mind, the part of you currently listening to my voice, processing these words, exerting willpower to maybe change your diet or ask for a promotion, that part processes roughly 40 bits of information per second.
40 bits.
Yes. Meanwhile, the subconscious mind, that background operating system, processes over 40 million bits of information per second.
Whoa, wait, 40 versus 40 million?
Exactly. So you are attempting to alter the entire trajectory of your life using 40 bits of processing power, while 40 million bits are utterly dedicated to maintaining the exact patterns you are trying to escape.
I mean, that is just completely unfair.
It feels that way, yes.
That-
If you haven't done the highly specific mechanical work to understand what is actually coded into that background system, you are essentially a passenger in your own life. You're just acting out a script that was finalized a long, long time ago.
So if the conscious mind is only handling a fraction of a percent of our actual processing, that completely recontextualizes the whole idea of willpower.
It really does. Willpower is just the 40 bits trying to shout over the 40 million.
Right. It means that just deciding to change a habit is mathematically doomed if the 40 million bit processor disagrees with you.
You will lose that battle every single time.
Okay, so we need to trace this back to the origin. Because if I'm not the one who consciously wrote this underlying script, where did all this code come from? Like, when did this massive operating system actually get installed?
The installation actually begins before you possess a conscious mind at all. The biological recording of this subconscious script initiates in the womb.
Wait, really? Before we're even born?
Yes. From the very moment of conception, the developing nervous system is acting as this highly sensitive receiver. Obviously, a fetus does not have the prefrontal cortex development to logically analyze its environment.
Right, they aren't sitting there pondering the state of the world.
Exactly. But they are constantly bathed in the chemical and hormonal environment of the mother. It's not just basic physical nutrients crossing the placenta. Maternal emotions are transmitted directly as chemical and energetic data.
Okay, I want to clarify the actual physical mechanism there. Are we talking about stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline physically crossing the placental barrier?
That is exactly what happens.
So if a mother is experiencing, say, chronic stress about paying rent or going through deep grief, the fetus is physically flooded with those exact same stress hormones.
Yes, they share the exact same biochemical soup.
But the fetus has no language. It has no conceptual understanding of what rent is or what grief means.
And that lack of context is precisely the issue. Because the fetal brain doesn't have an analytical filter to say, oh, this cortisol spike belongs to my mother because she's worried about her job.
Right, it doesn't know the difference between her stress and its own reality.
Exactly. It simply processes that biochemical flood as its own baseline reality. The developing amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, begins to actually wire itself around this constant influx of stress hormones.
Wow, so it's building its foundation on someone else's panic.
Yes. If the mother's baseline state is profound anxiety, that anxiety gets recorded into the cellular memory and the neuroarchitecture of the child as the default state of existence.
That is heavy.
It is. The neural pathways associated with hypervigilance are strengthened before the child even takes their first breath. You can literally be born already holding on to an emotional frequency that does not belong to you.
So the hardware is basically being pre-programmed before it even leaves the factory.
That is a very accurate way to look at it.
But the programming obviously doesn't stop at birth, right? The sources place a massive emphasis on a very specific window of time in early childhood.
Yes, the years from birth to age 7 are absolutely critical. They represent a distinct neurophysiological state.
How so? Like, what's happening in a child's brain that's different from ours?
Well, during this window, a child's brainwaves are operating at entirely different frequencies than an adult's. Right now, you and I are operating primarily in beta brainwaves.
Okay, beta waves, what does that mean?
Those are fast, analytical, alert frequencies. They range from roughly 12 to 30 hertz. But when a child is born, their brain operates primarily in delta waves, which is about 0.5 to 4 hertz.
And what's delta associated with in adults?
In an adult, delta is the frequency of deep, dreamless sleep.
So babies are basically sleepwalking through reality.
Neurologically speaking, yes. And then from roughly age 2 to 7, they transition primarily into theta waves. That's the 4 to 8 hertz range.
Okay, and why is theta so important?
Because theta is the exact brainwave state achieved during deep hypnosis.
Wait, really? So children up to age 7 are literally walking around in a measurable clinical state of hypnosis.
They absolutely are. They are highly suggestible, and they entirely lack the beta wave analytical function that allows adults to reject bad information.
Okay, let me make sure I'm getting this. Because they don't have that analytical filter, everything they see just goes straight in.
They possess zero capacity for critical rejection. So imagine a 30-year-old observing a toxic argument between their parents. Their beta-dominant prefrontal cortex analyzes it and says, you know, this is an unhealthy way to communicate. I shouldn't act like this.
Right, we can intellectually distance ourselves from it.
Exactly. But a 5-year-old in a theta state observing that exact same screaming match does not analyze it. Their brain functions like a high-definition video camera with the record button permanently engaged.
Just raw recording, no editing.
No editing whatsoever.
Yeah.
Every argument, every silent treatment, the underlying financial panic in the household, the way affection is given or withheld, it all completely bypasses the analytical mind because that mind does not exist yet.
Oh, wow. So it just downloads directly into the background operating system.
It is downloaded directly into the subconscious as absolute, incontrovertible truth about how the world functions.
They are essentially building the dictionary for their entire reality. They're defining what love looks like, what money feels like, what safety even means.
Yes, they are writing the code.
But, okay, this brings up a really crucial contradiction that I want to push back on. If the subconscious mind is recording all this data just to ensure the child's survival, how does it process deeply negative or traumatic environments? Because, logic would dictate that a survival mechanism wants to steer us away from pain, right?
Well, the subconscious does not operate on logic, and it certainly does not care about your happiness. Its prime directive is singular biological survival.
Okay, just don't die.
Exactly. And to ensure survival, the brain relies on predictive processing. It wants to minimize energy output by simply predicting what is going to happen next based on past data. Therefore, the subconscious mind runs a very primitive binary equation. Familiar equals safe. Unknown equals dangerous.
Familiar equals safe. But that equation only works if the familiar environment is actually objectively safe. Like, what if a child grows up in an environment characterized by chronic chaos or
Right.
extreme poverty? The familiar environment is inherently dangerous.
It is objectively dangerous, yes. But the subconscious relies on the single fact that you survived it.
Oh, I see.
Yes. The subconscious logs that chaotic environment and says, well, we experienced poverty, emotional unavailability, and constant stress today,
Yeah.
and we did not die. Therefore, poverty, emotional unavailability, and constant stress are our guaranteed parameters for survival.
So it logs those terrible states as the baseline.
It literally defines them as the safe zone. Safety to the subconscious has absolutely nothing to do with comfort or joy. It only means predictability.
Okay, I really want to push back on the mechanics of this in real life,
Mhm.
because I understand the psychology of seeking out the familiar. We all do that. But let's look at someone who grew up in extreme financial scarcity.
Okay.
As an adult, their conscious mind, their beta wave 40-bit processor, desperately wants to build wealth. They're reading the financial books, they start the side hustle. Are you telling me their own autonomic nervous system will physically intervene to stop them from making money, simply because wealth is unfamiliar?
I am saying it will initiate a full-blown physiological intervention.
Really? Just over trying to make money?
Yes. When that individual takes a concrete step toward wealth, let's say they are about to pitch a major investor or finally double their pricing, they're attempting to cross the boundary out of their subconscious safe zone of poverty.
Because poverty is what kept them alive as a kid.
Exactly. The subconscious detects this deviation from the familiar baseline, and it interprets it not as a smart business move, but as a literal mortal threat. It immediately triggers the sympathetic nervous system.
You mean it initiates a fight or flight response over an email pitch?
Precisely. The amygdala sounds the alarm. It floods the body with cortisol and adrenaline. The individual's hands might actually begin to shake. Their heart rate accelerates. They experience this crushing wave of anxiety that seems entirely disproportionate to just sending an email.
I mean, we've all felt that panic before hitting send.
Right. Or, alternatively, the subconscious might trigger the parasympathetic nervous system's freeze response.
What does that look like?
They are suddenly hit with a wave of exhaustion so heavy they can barely keep their eyes open. They experience this overwhelming compulsion to procrastinate, to scroll on their phone, to suddenly clean their entire house, to do literally anything other than send that email.
Wow. The sudden, inexplicable fatigue right when you need to be productive. I mean, we usually just label that as laziness, right? We beat ourselves up for lacking discipline.
And it is not a moral failing at all. It is a highly efficient biological override. The subconscious is actively pulling the emergency brake on your physiology to force you back into the familiar past.
Because the familiar past is the only place it knows for sure you won't die.
Exactly. This entirely reframes the concept of self-sabotage. You're not broken. Your survival mechanism is functioning with flawless precision. It is simply referencing a deeply corrupted, outdated blueprint.
That is mind-blowing. Okay, so if the operating system is functioning perfectly but it's running off a corrupted blueprint, we have to look at how that corrupted data actually manifests physically in the body over time.
Yes, the long-term effects are profound.
I want to use an analogy here to help visualize this. Think about a massive corporate email server.
Okay.
If employees just stop reading their emails, like they don't delete them, they don't process them, they just let them sit in the inbox, eventually the sheer volume of unread data begins to degrade the server's performance. The whole system slows down, applications fail to load, and eventually the network just crashes under the weight of unprocessed information. Is this kind of what happens when early emotional trauma is never processed?
The mechanics are remarkably similar to that, but instead of digital data on a server, we are dealing with biological somatization.
Somatization,
Yeah.
meaning it turns into a physical symptom.
Yes. When a child experiences profound emotional pain, feeling fundamentally unworthy, experiencing harsh rejection, or suffering abuse, they rarely possess the psychological tools or the safe environment required to actually process that emotion.
Right, they can't just go to therapy at age 4.
Exactly. So the emotion goes unexpressed. But we have to understand that an emotion is not just some abstract, floaty feeling. It is a complex biochemical event.
What does that mean, biochemically?
It involves the release of highly specific neuropeptides that flood the bloodstream and literally bind to receptors on the cells throughout your entire body.
So an unexpressed emotion isn't just sitting up in your brain, it is actively altering your cellular chemistry.
It becomes physically trapped in the tissue, Unresolved emotional pain solidifies within the body. It becomes this dense, hardened, energetic, and biological blockage.
So it's basically taking up space on the hard drive.
Yes. The source material refers to this specific phenomenon as putting an invisible padlock on the heart.
A padlock on the heart. That's a powerful image.
It's quite literal in a neurobiological sense. If a child's repeated experience is that opening up emotionally leads to severe pain, the subconscious initiates a protective protocol. It hardens that emotional center. The biological logic is flawless. Vulnerability equates to damage. Therefore, we will permanently close this pathway to survive.
But then, what happens when that child grows up? Say they turn 30 and actively, consciously try to find a healthy relationship. The conscious mind is desperately seeking connection, but you're saying the biological padlock is still engaged.
This is exactly where we see profound relational dysfunction. That individual could have a partner standing right in front of them, offering genuine, secure affection, and they will be mechanically incapable of receiving it.
Even if they really, really want it.
Even if they desperately want it. Because the moment true affection is offered, it triggers that hardened, unresolved trauma. The subconscious immediately interprets the incoming love as a precursor to pain.
So it hits the emergency brake again.
Exactly. The individual will suddenly feel suffocated, or they will manufacture a massive argument out of nothing just to create distance, or they might experience complete emotional numbness. The hardened emotion acts as a literal barrier, repelling the exact thing the conscious mind desires.
And what if those unread emails, those hardened neuropeptides, are just ignored for decades? The source material suggests this goes way beyond just ruining your dating life. It crosses over into actual diagnosable physical illness, right?
It absolutely does. The field of psychoneuroimmunology provides the scientific framework for this. Decades of suppressing heavy, dense emotional energy exacts a massive metabolic toll on the body.
It just wears you down.
Yes, the immune system becomes deeply compromised by the chronic low-grade inflammatory response triggered by that unresolved trauma. And this manifests as physical ailments that often baffle traditional diagnostics.
Like what kind of ailments?
Chronic fatigue syndrome, certain autoimmune disorders, idiopathic pain where there is no obvious structural cause. These are frequently the body's somatization of decades of hardened emotional data. The body is always keeping the score. Eventually, the physical hardware begins to literally break down under the strain of the corrupted software.
Wow. This forces such a complete paradigm shift in how we view the mind-body connection. I mean, we are so conditioned to view our thoughts and feelings as ephemeral, like they are just passing clouds in the sky of our minds.
That is a very dangerous misconception.
Right, because if an unexpressed feeling of unworthiness from 20 years ago can degrade my immune system today, it means our internal monologue has actual physical weight. It's not abstract at all.
To understand the true impact of the internal monologue, we have to transition from biology into biophysics. Thoughts are not abstract concepts. They are tangible, measurable, energetic events.
Okay, biophysics.
Yes, the human brain processes an estimated 60,000 to 90,000 thoughts a single day. And every single one of those thoughts generates a measurable bioelectrical impulse.
Okay, I need to challenge this specifically.
Oh, right, Ed.
When we talk about thoughts having a measurable frequency, or like a hertz level, a lot of people write this off as New Age metaphor, raise your vibration, that sort of thing. How does a purely subjective experience, like me thinking I am a failure, translate into an objective, measurable frequency that a machine could actually read?
It is not a metaphor. It is basic electrophysiology. Neural activity generates electrical currents. When neurons fire collectively in the brain, they create synchronized electrical pulses, which we measure as brain waves using an EEG.
Right, the electroencephalogram.
Exactly. But it goes much deeper than just the brain. The heart generates an electromagnetic field that is significantly more powerful than the brain's field.
Really, the heart's field is stronger.
Oh, massively. And when you experience an emotion, it alters the rhythmic beating of the heart, which in turn alters the frequency of the electromagnetic field your entire body projects. We can literally map these frequencies on an energetic scale of consciousness.
So different emotional states actually vibrate at different speeds.
Yes, exactly. At the absolute bottom of the scale, you find the most dense, low-frequency states of being. This includes shame, guilt, apathy, grief, and fear.
That heavy stuff.
Very heavy. When a person is steeped in these thoughts, their bioelectromagnetic field is literally physically contracted. The frequency is slow and dense.
And what's at the top?
As you move up the scale, passing the critical threshold of courage, you enter higher frequency states. Willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, and ultimately peace. These states generate highly coherent, fast, expansive electromagnetic frequencies.
Let's ground this in the day-to-day for a second, because most of us understand that being in a state of joy is subjectively better than being in a state of guilt. That's obvious.
Of course.
But how does the physical frequency of my thoughts interact with the external world? Like, if my baseline frequency is 2047 judgment, say I am constantly judging my coworkers, I am complaining about the traffic, I am hypercritical of my partner, what is that low hertz emission actually doing to my reality?
It is dictating the reality you perceive and attract through a combination of cognitive function and bioresonance.
Break that down for me.
Neurologically, this involves the reticular activating system, or the RAS. It's a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as a gatekeeper for information.
A gatekeeper.
Yes, your RAS filters out the millions of bits of data around you and only lets through what it believes is important to you. So if your dominant frequency is judgment, you have programmed your RAS to aggressively scan the environment for things to judge.
Well, it's like buying a red car and suddenly you see red cars everywhere on the highway.
Yeah.
If my internal frequency is tuned to, everything is terrible, my brain will just selectively edit my reality to prove me right.
Exactly. It filters out the good to validate the bad, but it also operates on the physical law of resonance.
The law of resonance. Like tuning forks.
Yes. In physics, when two frequencies are in resonance, they amplify each other. Your overarching emotional state acts as a continuous broadcast.
Like a radio station.
Precisely. If you are vibrating at the dense frequency of victimhood, you are emitting a signal that perfectly aligns with circumstances, events, and individuals that require a victim.
Oh, wow.
You will flawlessly attract people who will victimize you because their predatory frequency perfectly locks in with your victim frequency. If your baseline is jealousy, you will continuously manifest situations that validate your jealousy. Life is just a neutral mirror, mechanically reflecting your dominant frequency back to you.
That is terrifying, but also incredibly empowering. But this brings up an incredibly complex social dynamic.
Let's hear it.
Let's say I understand this mechanism. I am actively doing the work to elevate my frequency. I am aiming for courage, joy, and coherence.
A great goal.
But I have a close friend or maybe a family member who is completely entrenched in the lowest frequencies. They are a chronic complainer, they are permanently angry at the world, and they constantly want to vent to me. If I am trying to be a compassionate, supportive person, don't I have a moral obligation to sit there and listen to them?
This is perhaps the most dangerous trap of human empathy.
Dangerous. How?
Well,
Because we fundamentally confuse being a compassionate presence with being an emotional dumping ground. Individuals trapped in chronic low-frequency states, constant complaining, perpetual victimhood, relentless negativity operate as what we can clinically describe as energy vampires.
Energy vampires. I've heard that term, but what does it actually mean biologically?
It is crucial to understand first that they are rarely doing this maliciously. They are operating unconsciously. But the mechanical truth of the interaction is devastating to your system.
Okay, what exactly is happening mechanically when I sit on the phone for an hour listening to someone complain about their life?
You are experiencing emotional contagion driven by mirror neurons combined with literal energetic siphoning.
Siphoning, like stealing gas from a car.
Yes. When someone is in a highly dysregulated low-frequency state, they inherently seek regulation. When they vent to you, a person holding a higher, more stable frequency, they are attempting to use your bioenergetic field to stabilize their own. So they are plugging into my battery to charge their own phone.
That is precisely the mechanism. And the physical evidence of this exchange is immediate. Think about how you feel after that hour-long phone call. The chronic complainer will often sigh and say, "Oh, I feel so much better. Thank you for listening."
Right, they always feel incredibly refreshed.
Because they feel lighter. They have successfully siphoned your high-frequency energy. Meanwhile, you hang up the phone and feel completely drained. Your body feels physically heavy. You might have a headache or feel an intense urge to just go to sleep.
Oh, absolutely. I felt that exact physical crash.
That is not just psychological fatigue. A literal transfer of energy has occurred. You have absorbed their dense, low-frequency residue, and your own frequency has plummeted as a result.
Wow. And the crazy part is, we are completely conditioned to view that kind of absorption as a virtue. Like, we are taught that self-sacrifice is the ultimate form of love. Taking on someone else's pain, putting our own needs at the very bottom of the priority list, whether it's for our parents, our kids, our friends, that is universally praised by society. Are you saying this virtue is actually destroying us?
The romanticization of self-sacrifice is one of the most toxic, limiting scripts programmed into the human collective.
Toxic.
Yes, it is a
Yeah.
profound distortion of true service, energetically and mechanically, when you continuously prioritize everyone else's demands over your own physical, emotional, and energetic well-being. You are broadcasting a highly specific, highly destructive signal.
Okay, what is the signal? If I am constantly sacrificing my own sleep, my own money, my own peace to help everyone else,
Ugh.
what am I actually telling the universe?
You are transmitting a frequency that says, I do not matter, my boundaries do not exist, my needs are irrelevant.
Oh.
And because the universe operates on resonance, it must reflect that belief back to you. The reticular activating system and the law of resonance will ensure that your reality is populated exclusively by people and situations that consume you.
So I just attract more people who want to drain my battery.
You will continuously attract demanding individuals, relentless crises, and endless obligations that force you to sacrifice even more. By erasing your own needs, you send a mechanical instruction to reality that you should be ignored. And reality will oblige without hesitation.
By erasing your own needs, you send a mechanical instruction to reality that you should be ignored. That is a paradigm-shattering insight right there. Because the exhaustion so many people feel isn't from the actual work they do. It's from the invisible script demanding they bleed themselves dry to prove their worth.
Precisely.
And the only way to genuinely help anyone is to fiercely protect your own frequency first. You cannot power someone else's grid if your own generator is completely out of fuel.
Exactly. True compassion requires a surplus of energy, not a deficit. You must secure your own frequency before you can ever elevate anyone else's.
Okay, this leaves us at the absolute critical juncture of this deep dive. The diagnosis is incredibly clear. The invisible script was programmed in the womb and solidified by age 7. It was running our autonomic nervous system. It has locked unresolved trauma into our cells, and it is dictating the electromagnetic frequency we broadcast to the entire world.
That is the complete picture.
It feels like an impenetrable fortress of biology and physics. So the million-dollar question: how do we actually dismantle a system of this magnitude? How do we rewrite code that is deeply embedded in the subconscious architecture?
The architecture is formidable, certainly, but it is not permanent.
Thank goodness.
Yes, the brain possesses neuroplasticity, which is the ability to physically rewire its own neural networks until the day we die.
So we can change the hardware.
We can change the wiring, but rewiring requires a massive shift from passive absorption to active, conscious observation. You have to transition from being the software to being the programmer. And the initial mandatory step is diagnostics.
Like running a scan on a computer.
Exactly. You cannot rewrite code if you do not know what the corrupted lines say. You have to uncover the specific idiosyncratic beliefs your own subconscious is harboring.
But wait, if it is subconscious, it is by definition below my conscious awareness. I don't know what I don't know. How do I access data that my own brain is actively hiding from me?
You access it by bypassing the analytical beta wave mind. We use a highly effective diagnostic tool known as the inner voice test.
The inner voice test. I love the sound of that.
It is incredibly revealing. This practice forces the subconscious to reveal its baseline programming before the conscious mind has time to censor it.
Okay, walk me through the exact mechanics of this inner voice test. How do we execute it?
You select a specific concept or area of your life where you are experiencing chronic repetition or friction. Let us use wealth as the focal point.
Okay, money. Always a good one.
I instruct people to take a physical piece of currency, a $100 bill or even just a coin, and hold it flat in the palm of their hand. Stare directly at it. Then, completely quiet your logical mind. Do not attempt to formulate a positive affirmation. Do not try to analyze the economy.
So no intellectualizing.
None at all. Just observe the object and listen intently for the immediate, unfiltered echo that arises in your mind. The absolute first thought or bodily sensation that bubbles up.
The knee-jerk reaction before the conscious mind steps in to say the polite or right thing.
Precisely. That instantaneous reflex is the 40 million bit processor speaking. What does the echo say? Does it immediately say there will never be enough?
Or like, does a sudden tightness grip your chest, signaling anxiety?
Yes, physical sensations are key. Does the voice whisper, rich people are inherently corrupt?
Oh, that's a big one for lots of people.
It is. Or let us apply it to intimacy. Close your eyes and silently speak the word marriage or commitment. What is the biological and psychological reflex? Does the chest expand with a feeling of safety and warmth? Or does the inner voice immediately echo loss of autonomy or inevitable betrayal?
It is brilliant because it removes all the intellectualization. I can tell myself all day long that I want a committed relationship, but if my inner voice test reveals that my subconscious equates marriage with a prison sentence, then every time I get close to a relationship, my autonomic nervous system is going to trigger an escape protocol to save me from prison.
Exactly. You will sabotage it every time. The inner voice test isolates the specific virus in your programming.
Okay, so once we know what the virus is, what's next?
Once you have identified the precise nature of the corrupted code, you move to the second phase, neutralization through observation.
Neutralization.
Yes, this is where we apply the mechanics of mindfulness, but not in some mystical sense. We are applying it as a clinical tool for neural pruning.
Neural pruning, meaning we are actively trying to let the old neural pathways wither and die off. How does simply observing accomplish that?
By disconnecting the emotional charge from the thought, the source material emphasizes a practice of dedicated daily observation, roughly 5 to 10 minutes of sitting quietly and simply watching your internal monologue.
Just watching it like a movie.
Exactly. The critical mechanic here involves the default mode network, or DMN. These are the interconnected brain regions that are highly active when you are not focused on the outside world. The DMN is essentially where the ego and the invisible scripts reside.
Okay, so that's the projector room.
Yes. When an old negative script arises, say a thought that says, you are going to fail this project, the typical response is either to believe it and feel intense anxiety or to fight it and feel intense frustration.
Right, we either spiral into the fear or we try to aggressively push the thought away.
Both of those reactions flood the neural pathway with metabolic energy, which actually strengthens the connection according to Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together.
Wait, really? So even fighting the negative thought is just feeding it more battery power?
Yes, resistance is a form of engagement. But when you simply observe the thought neutrally, you watch it arise and you say, there is the I am going to fail script executing again, and you refuse to attach any emotional response to it, you starve that neural pathway of energy.
You just let it pass by without reacting.
Exactly. Without the emotional neurochemistry to reinforce it, the synaptic connections literally begin to weaken. You create psychological distance. You realize that you are not the thought. You are the consciousness observing the thought.
That distinction is everything. I am not the faulty app. I am the user holding the device, deciding whether or not to launch the app.
Beautifully stated.
But starving the old pathways isn't enough, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. If we are pruning the old connections, we have to actively install new ones. We have to write the new script.
That is correct. This is the phase of active rewiring, and it requires highly specific timing and rigorous consistency. The subconscious does not learn through logic or debate. It learns through repetition. To establish a new baseline, to create a new safe zone, you must engage in conscious repetition for a minimum of 21 days.
The 21-day metric is everywhere in behavioral psychology. But what is the actual biological significance of that timeline? Why exactly 21 days?
It is the biological timeline required for the brain to establish and strengthen a new neural pathway. Over 21 days of consistent firing, the brain begins to wrap these new neural connections in myelin.
Myelin, what's that?
It's a fatty sheath that insulates the nerve fibers and significantly increases the speed of electrical transmission. Once a pathway is heavily myelinated, it becomes the brain's new default route. It becomes automatic.
Okay, so that's how a new habit actually gets locked into the hardware.
Exactly. But the repetition is completely useless if the firewall is up. You cannot aggressively shout a new positive affirmation at your beta wave mind in the middle of the day and expect the subconscious to absorb it. You have to bypass the prefrontal cortex entirely.
Which brings us right back to brainwaves. How do we get an adult brain back into that highly suggestible hypnotic theta state we were in when we were kids so we can actually input the new code?
We utilize the hypnagogic and hypnopompic twilight states.
Hypnagogic and hypnopompic. Say that 3 times fast.
It's a mouthful. But these are the specific narrow windows of consciousness immediately preceding sleep and immediately upon waking. As you drift towards sleep, your brain waves naturally decelerate.
So they slow down.
Yes. You shift out of the busy analytical beta state through the relaxed alpha state, and you descend right into the highly programmable theta state. During these twilight windows, the analytical filter, the firewall, drops completely.
Oh, man. This is a devastating realization for modern society. Because what do most of us do in that exact window right before sleep?
We look at our phones.
Yes. We lie in bed scrolling through apocalyptic news, We review our absolute worst mistakes of the day, we mentally argue with people we're mad at, and we stress about tomorrow's to-do list. We are taking the most vulnerable, programmable brainwave state of the entire day and using it to aggressively install anxiety software into our subconscious.
It is chronic self-sabotage on a neurological level. You are using the exact mechanism of neuroplasticity to hardwire your own stress.
That is awful. So how do we fix that?
To rewrite the script, you must hijack that window. As you enter that twilight state, as the logic centers power down, you introduce the new directive. If your inner voice test revealed a block around worthiness, you do not analyze it. You simply repeatedly and calmly assert the new truth.
I am entirely worthy of profound, secure love.
Just feeding it right in. Yes, and you feel the physiological reality of that statement as if it is already true. You feed this data directly into the 40 million bit processor while the security guard is asleep. If you maintain this discipline for 21 consecutive days, the myelination process solidifies the new pathway. The subconscious accepts the new directive as familiar. It becomes the new safe zone.
Wow. And when the internal architecture changes, the external output has to change, right? How long does it typically take for this internal rewiring to actually manifest in our real lives? Like, when does the chronic financial stress break or the terrible bosses stop appearing?
While the biological foundation is laid in 21 days, the physical manifestation of those changes requires sustained coherence. The source material indicates it typically takes 3 to 6 months to witness massive, tangible shifts in your external reality.
Like just 6 months. That's a commitment.
It requires time for your newly stabilized high-frequency bioelectromagnetic broadcast to engage the law of resonance and actually reorganize the external environment. But it is a mechanical certainty. If you fundamentally alter the frequency of the broadcast, the radio receiver of reality has no choice but to play a different station.
The sheer mechanics of this are just breathtaking. It removes all the mysticism and all the victimhood entirely from the equation. We just synthesize the magnitude of what we have unpacked here today.
Please do.
Your current reality, the exact level of success you have, the exact relationship dynamics you suffer through, the exact frustrations you repeat, none of it is a cosmic accident. You are not cursed by the universe, and you are not inherently broken. You are simply operating a hyper-advanced piece of biological machinery that is flawlessly executing a survival script written decades ago. The blueprint of your life was drawn up in the dark before you even possessed the cognitive ability to read it, based on the ambient stress of your environment, the chaotic emotional data you absorbed, and the primitive equation that whatever didn't kill you must be kept familiar.
You have spent your entire life defending a fortress that was built to protect a frightened child. The fortress is no longer necessary, but the guards are still at their posts.
Exactly. But the ultimate revelation is that the administrator access has been handed back to you. You understand the source code now. You understand that your thoughts are not fleeting ghosts. They are measurable frequencies dictating the bioresonance of your life. You know how to identify the energy vampires draining your system, and you understand the catastrophic danger of self-sacrifice.
You have the manual now.
You really do. You have the tools. You can utilize the inner voice test to diagnose the corrupted files. You could leverage the DMN and neural pruning through neutral observation to starve the old pathways. And tonight, right as your brain descends into the theta state, you can begin the 21-day myelination process of writing an entirely new operating system. You are no longer the passive output of your childhood. You are the active, conscious architect of your reality.
The transition from passive software to conscious programmer is the most profound biological and psychological evolution a human being can undergo. The raw mechanics are entirely in your favor, provided you have the discipline to apply them.
Which leaves me with one final, unavoidable question. A thought for you to carry with you as you step back into your day. We have spent this entire deep dive deconstructing how your first 7 years locked you into an invisible script that dictated your adult life. But pull your focus outward for just a moment. Look at the environment you're currently cultivating. Whether you are a parent raising a toddler, an aunt, an uncle, a teacher, or simply a prominent figure in your community. Wait, let me rephrase that without the pause. What invisible scripts are you actively broadcasting? What raw, unedited data are the 0 to 7-year-olds in your life absorbing right now? Simply by watching how you panic over money, or how you tolerate disrespect, or how you constantly sacrifice your own joy. Your unresolved trauma is currently becoming their baseline programming. So ask yourself, through your daily reactions, are you handing the next generation the keys to their own consciousness, or are you just locking them into the exact same cage you were trying to escape? Something to sit with. Thank you so much for exploring these mechanisms with us on this deep dive. Stay fiercely protective of your frequency, question your internal echoes, and we will see you next time.